This episode of Sleepy is proudly sponsored by Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for clean eating. It's summer, and I absolutely love summer. The longer days, the warm light, the way everything just seems to kind of slow down, but there's still a lot going on. It makes me want to eat fresh, simple meals that really help me feel good. Well, Green Chef makes that easy. Their meal kits are full of fresh, organic, seasonal products and 100% responsibly sourced proteins, crafted into delicious recipes that support the way you want to feel. Whether you're gluten-free, plant-based, high-protein, or just trying to eat a little bit more mindfully, Green Chef has over 80 meal options every week to choose from, including new recipes designed for gut and brain health too. I recently made their chicken with lemon cream recipe, and it was so delicious. With sauteed greens and jasmine rice, just nourishing, light, simple, exactly what I want on a bright summer day to make me feel good. Green Chef even has quick salads, smoothies, and breakfasts, so whatever time of the day, there's something ready to support your summer rhythm easily. Make this summer your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50sleepy and use code 50sleepy to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50sleepy at greenchef.com/50sleepy. I'll have a link for this in the description of the show. Thanks. This episode of Sleepy is proudly sponsored by Shopify. When I first started this show and started podcasting in general, I learned a lot of stuff the hard way. Writing, editing, recording, producing, marketing, social media. It was a lot to start doing this, and while I love knowing how to do all those things now, I definitely would have loved to know about tools that would have made my life simpler, like I do today. Tools that make my business and my life just run smoother. Well, Shopify is definitely one of those tools. It is the business behind the business. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel to businesses just getting started. There's hundreds of ready-to-use templates to build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. Shopify has tons of helpful AI tools to help you build out and fill your site in no time. It's also really easy to get the word out with easily made email and social media campaigns. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into reality with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Otis. Go to shopify.com/OTIS. Shopify.com/Otis. I'll put a link for this in the show notes. Thanks. Hey, my name's Otis Gray, and you're listening to Sleepy. A podcast where I read old books to help you get to sleep. I've got a really lovely story for you tonight in the form of diary entries. It's the way this novel is written by an author I've never read on the show before. I think you're really going to like this one. And before we get to the bedtime reading, I just want to profoundly thank all of our patrons on patreon.com, which is a website where you can go and donate a couple dollars to hear an ad-free version of the show and just be a part of making it. This is where I would usually individually thank all of our patrons, but if you're hearing this, I am currently in Alaska, and I'm recording this ahead of time. I'm in Alaska reporting a story for a different show for America's Test Kitchen, which I'm very excited about. So when I get back, I will read all of the new names of the lovely people signing up to support the Sleepy Podcast on Patreon. And if you'd like to be a supporter of the show in exchange for cool perks, I get $2. Like I said, you get an ad-free version of Sleepy. $5 gets you access to our poetry feed. But even $1, no matter how much you give, it really goes a long way It's so appreciated, and no matter how much you give, I will read your name on the opening credits of the next show after you do, when I'm not in Alaska. So, if you want to be a part of making this show, like so many patrons already are, you can go to patreon.com/sleepyradio and donate even $1. Thanks. And as always, the music you're hearing is by my good friend James Lepkowski, and the cover art for Sleepy is by Gracie Kanan. Tonight's bedtime story is, it's called The Diary of a Provincial Lady. And it is exactly that. This novel is completely in diary form, which I've probably read a couple novels on the show like that before, and they're really wonderful for our purposes because they do read very stream of consciousness. And this is no different. It's exactly what this book reads like, and I really enjoyed reading it. So I hope you enjoy falling asleep to it. So without further ado, this is The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield. And now is the time for you to fluff up your pillow just how you like it. Feel yourself melt into your bed. Get real comfortable. Close your eyes and let me read to you. November 7th. Plant the indoor bulbs. Just as I am in the middle of them, Lady Box calls. I say untruthfully how nice to see her, and beg her to sit down while I finish the bulbs. Lady B makes determined attempt to sit down in armchair, while I have already placed 2 bulb bowls and the bag of charcoal, is headed off just in time and takes the sofa. Do I know, she asks, how very late it is for indoor bulbs? September really, or even October is the time. Do I know that the only really reliable firm of hyacinths is Somebody of Harlem? Cannot catch the name of the firm, which is Dutch, but reply, yes, I do know, but think it my duty to buy Empire products. Feel at the time, and still think that this is an excellent reply. Unfortunately, Vicky comes into the drawing room later and says, "Oh, Mommy, are those the bulbs we got at Woolworth's?" Lady B stays to tea. Remember, bread and butter too thick. Speak to Ethel. We talk some more about bulbs, the Dutch school of painting, our vicar's wife, sciatica, and all quiet on the Western Front. Query, is it possible to cultivate the art of conversation when living in the country all year round? Lady B inquires after the children. Tell her about that Robin, whom I refer to in a detached way as the boy, so that she shan't think I am foolish about him, is getting on fairly well at school, and that Mademoiselle says Vicky is starting a cold. Do I realize, says Lady B, that the cold habit is entirely unnecessary and can be avoided by giving the child a nasal spray of salt and water every morning before breakfast? Think of several rather tart and witty rejoinders to this, but unfortunately, not until Lady B's Bentley has taken her away. Finish the bulbs and put them in the cellar. Feel that after all, cellar is probably drafty. Change my mind and take them all up to the attic. Cook says something is wrong with the range. November 8th. Robert has looked at the range and says nothing wrong whatever. Makes unoriginal suggestion about pulling out dampers. Cook very angry and will probably give notice. Try to perpetuate her by saying that we are going to Bournemouth for Robin's half-term, and that will give the household a rest. Cook replies austerely that they will take the opportunity to do some extra cleaning. Wish I could believe this was true. Preparations for Bournemouth rather marred by discovering that Robert, in bringing down the suitcases from the attic, has broken 3 of the bulb bowls. Says he understood that I had put them in the cellar, and so wasn't expecting them. November 11th, Bournemouth. Find that history, as usual, repeats itself. Same hotel, same frenzied scurry around the school to find Robin, same collection of parents, most of them also staying at the hotel. Discover strong tendency to exchange with fellow parents exactly the same remarks as last year and the year before that. Speak of this to Robert, who returns no answer. Perhaps he is afraid of repeating himself. This suggests query. Does Robert, perhaps, take in what I say, even when he makes no reply? Find Robin looking thin, and speak to Machen, who says brightly, oh no, she thinks on the whole he's put on weight this term, and then begins to talk about new buildings. Query. Why do all schools have to run up new buildings about once in every 6 months? Take Robin out. He eats several meals, and a good many sweets. He produces a friend, and we take both to Corfe Castle. The boys climb, Robert smokes in silence, and I sit about on stones. Overhear a woman remark, as she gazes up at half a tower that has withstood several centuries, that this looks fragile, which strikes me as a singular choice of adjective. Same woman, climbing over a block of solid masonry, points out that this has evidently fallen off somewhere. Take the boys back to the hotel for dinner. Robin says, whilst the friend is out of hearing, it's been nice for us, taking out Williams, hasn't it? Hastily express appreciation for this privilege. Robert takes the boys back after dinner, and I sit in hotel lounge with several other mothers, and we all talk about our boys in tones of disparagement, and about one another's boys with great enthusiasm. I'm asked what I think of Harriet Hume, but am unable to say, as I have not read it. I have a depressed feeling that this is going to be another case of Orlando, about which was perfectly able to talk most intelligently until I read it, and found myself unfortunately unable to understand any of it. Robert comes up very late and says he must have dropped asleep over the Times. Query. Why come to Bournemouth to do this? Postcard by the last post from Lady B to ask if I have remembered that there is a committee meeting of the Women's Institute on the 14th. Should not dream of answering this. November 12th. Home yesterday, and am struck, as so often before, by immense accumulation of domestic disasters that always await one after any absence. Trouble with kitchen range has resulted in no hot water. Also, cook says mutton has gone, and I will speak to the butcher, there being no excuse weather like this. Vicky's cold, unlike the mutton, hasn't gone. Mademoiselle says, ah, c'est petit. Mademoiselle says something lovely in French. Hope that is only her Latin way of dramatizing the situation. Robert reads the Times after dinner and goes to sleep. November 13th. Interesting, but disconcerting. Train of thought started by prolonged discussion with Vicky as to the existence or otherwise of a locality which she refers throughout as HEL. Am determined to be a modern parent and assure her that there is not, never has been, and never could be such a place. Vicky maintains that there is, and refers me to the Bible. I become more modern than ever, and tell her that theories of eternal punishment were invented to frighten people. Vicky replies indignantly that they frighten her in the least, that they don't frighten her in the least. She likes to think about HEL. Feel that deadlock has been reached, and can only leave her to singular method of enjoying herself. Query. Are modern children going to revolt against being modern? And if so, what form will reaction of modern parents take? Much worried by a letter from the bank to say that my account is overdrawn to the extent of £8, 4 shillings, and 4 pence. Cannot understand this, as was convinced that I still had credit balance of £2, 7 shillings, and 6 pence. Annoyed to find that my accounts, contents of cash box and counterfoils and checkbook, do not tally. Mem. Find envelope on which I jotted down Bournemouth expenses. Also, little piece of paper, probably last leaf of grocer's book, with note about cash payment to sweep. This may clear things up. Take a look at bulb bowls on returning suitcase to attic, and am inclined to think it looks as though the cat had been up here. If so, this will be the last straw. Shall tell Lady Box that I sent all my bulbs to a sick friend in a nursing home. November 14th. Arrival of book on the month choice, and am disappointed. History of a place I am not interested in, by an author I do not like. Put it back into its wrapper again, and make fresh choice to recommended list. Find, on reading small literary bulletin enclosed with book, that exactly this course of procedure has been anticipated, and that it is described as being the mistake of a lifetime. Am much annoyed, although not so much at having made, possibly, the mistake of a lifetime, as at depressing thought of all our being so much alike that intelligent writers can apparently predict our behavior with perfect accuracy. Decide not to mention any of this to Lady B, always so tiresomely superior about book of the month as it is, taking up attitude that she does not require to be told what to read. Should like to think of good repartee to this. Letter by second post from my dear old friend Sissy Crab, asking if she may come here for 2 nights or so on her way to Norwich. Query: why Norwich? Am surprised to realize that anybody ever goes to, lives at, or comes from Norwich, but quite see that this is unreasonable of me. Remind myself how very little one knows of England one lives in, which vaguely suggests a quotation. This, however, does not materialize. Many years since we last met, writes Sissy, and she expects we have both changed a good deal. P.S. Do I remember the dear old pond, and the day of the Spanish arrowroot? Can recall after some thought, dear old pond, at bottom of Sissy's father's garden, and am completely baffled by a Spanish arrowroot. Query: could this be one of the Sherlock Holmes stories? Sounds like it. Reply that we shall be delighted to see her, and what a lot we shall have to talk about after all these years. This, I find in reflection, is not true, but cannot rewrite letter on that account. Ignore Spanish arrowroot altogether. Robert, when I tell him about dear old school friends' impending arrival, does not seem pleased. Asks what we are expected to do with her. I suggest showing her the garden, and remember too late that this is hardly the right time of year. At any rate, I say, it will be nice to talk over old times, which reminds me of the Spanish arrowroot reference, still unfathomed. Speak to Ethel about the spare room, and am much annoyed to find that one blue candlestick has been broken, and the bedside rug has gone to the cleaners, and cannot be retrieved in time. Take away bedside rug from Robert's dressing room, and put it in spare room instead, hoping he will not notice its absence. November 15th. Robert does notice absence of rug, and says he must have it back again. Return it to dressing room, and take small and inferior dyed mat from the night nursery to put in spare room. Mademoiselle is heard about this, and says to Vicky, who repeats it to me, that in this country she finds herself treated like a worm. November 17th. Dear old school friend Cassie Crab, due by 3 o'clock on the train. On telling Robert this, he says it is most inconvenient to meet her, owing to vestry meeting, but eventually agrees to abandon vestry meeting. I'm touched. Unfortunately, just after he has started, telegram arrives to say that dear old school friend has missed the connection and will not arrive until 7 o'clock. This means putting off dinner till 8, which cook won't like. Cannot send message to kitchen by Ethel, as it is her afternoon now, so I'm obliged to tell cook myself. She is not pleased. Robert returns from station, not pleased either. Mademoiselle, quite inexplicably, says, Il ne manque que ça. This comment, wholly unjustifiable, as non-appearance of Sissy Crab cannot concern her in any way. Have often thought that the French are tactless. Ethel returns, 10 minutes late, and says, shall she light a fire in the spare room? I say no, it is not cold enough, but really mean that Sissy is no longer, in my opinion, deserving of luxuries. Subsequently feel this is to be unworthy attitude, and light fire myself. It smokes. Robert calls up to know, what is that smoke? I call down that it is nothing. Robert comes up and opens the window, and shuts the door, and says it will go all right now. Do not like to point out that the open window will make the room cold. Play Ludo with Vicky in the drawing room. Robert reads the Times and goes to sleep, but wakes in time to make second expedition to the station. Thankful to say that this time he returns with Sissy Crab, who has put on weight, and says several times that she supposes we have both changed a good deal, which I consider unnecessary. Take her upstairs. Spare room like an ice house, owing to open window, and fire still smoking, though less. She says room is delightful, and I leave her, begging her to ask for anything she wants. Mem, tell Ether she must answer spare room bell if it rings. Hope it won't. Ask Robert while dressing for dinner what he thinks of Sissy. He says he has not known her long enough to judge. Ask if he thinks her good-looking. He says that he has not thought about it. Ask what they talked about on the way from the station. He says he does not remember. November 19th. Last 2 days very, very, very trying, owing to quite unexpected discovery that Sissy Crab is strictly on a diet. This causes Robert to take a dislike to her. Utter impossibility of obtaining lentils or lemons at short notice makes housekeeping unduly difficult. Mademoiselle, in the middle of lunch, insists on discussing diet question, and several times exclaims, "Oh, mon Dieu Saint Joseph," which I consider profane, and beg her never to repeat. Consult Sissy about bulbs, which look very much as if mice had been at them. She says, unlimited watering, and tells me about her own bulbs at Norwich. Am discouraged. Administer unlimited water to the bulbs, some of which goes through the attic floor onto the landing below, and move half of them down to the cellar, as Sissy Crab says attic is airless. Our vicar's wife calls this afternoon, says she once knew someone who had relations living near Norwich, but cannot remember their name. Sissy Crab replies that very likely, if we knew their name, we might find she'd heard of them, or even met them. We agree that the world is a small place. Talk about the Riviera, the new waistline, choir practice, the servant question, and Ramsay MacDonald. November 22nd. Sissy Crab leaves. Begs me in the kindest way to stay with her in Norwich, where she has already told me that she lives in a bed-sitting room with 2 cats and cooks her own lentils on a gas ring. I say, yes, I should love to. We part effusively. Spend entire morning writing letters I have had to leave unanswered during Sissy's visit. Invitation from Lady Box to us to dine and meet distinguished literary friends staying with her, one of whom is the author of Symphony in Three Sexes. Hesitate to write back and say that I have never heard of Symphony in Three Sexes, so merely accept. Ask for Symphony in Three Sexes at the library, although doubtfully. Doubt more than justified by tone, in which Mr. Jones replies that it is not in stock and never has been. Ask Robert whether he thinks I had better wear my blue or black and gold at Lady B's. He says that either will do. Ask if he can remember which one I wore last time. He cannot. Mademoiselle says it was the blue, and offers to make slight alterations to black and gold, which will, she says, render it unrecognizable. I accept, and she cuts large pieces out of the back of it. I say, pas trop de la côté. And she replies intelligently, Je comprends, Madame ne désire pas voir nous à salon. Query. Have not the French sometimes a very strange way of expressing themselves, and will this react unfavorably on Vicky? Tell Robert about the distinguished literary friends, but do not mention Symphony in Three Sexes. He makes no answer. Have absolutely decided that if Lady B should introduce us to distinguished literary friends, or anyone else, as our agent, and our agent's wife, I shall at once leave the house. Tell Robert this. He says nothing. Ma'am, put evening shoes out of the window to see if fresh air will remove smell of petrol. November 25th. Go and get haircut and have manicure in the morning, in honor of Lady B's dinner party. Should like new pair of evening stockings, but depressing communication from bank, still maintaining that I am overdrawn, prevents this. Also rather unpleasantly worded letter from Messrs. Frippy and Coleman, requesting payment of overdue account by return of post. Think better not to mention this to Robert, as bill for coke arrived yesterday. Also reminder that rates are much overdue. Therefore write civilly to Monsieur F. and C. to the effect that the check follows in a few days. Hope they think I have temporarily mislaid checkbook. Black and gold, as rearranged by Mademoiselle very satisfactory, and am obliged to do my hair 5 times owing to wave having been badly set. Robert unfortunately comes in just as I am using brand new and expensive lipstick, and objects strongly to result. Query. If Robert could be induced to go to London rather oftener, would he perhaps take broader view of these things? I'm convinced we are going to be late, as Robert has trouble in getting car to start, but he refuses to be agitated. I'm bound to add that subsequent events justify this attitude, as we arrive before anybody else, also before Lady B is down. Count at least a dozen Roman hyacinths growing in bowls all over the drawing room, probably grown by one of the gardeners, whatever Lady B may say. Resolve not to comment on them in any way, but am conscious that this is slightly ungenerous. Lady B comes down, wearing silver lace frock that nearly touches the floor all around, and has new waistline. This may or not be becoming, but has effect of making everybody else's frock look out of date. 9 other people present besides ourselves, most of them staying in-house. Nobody is introduced. Decide that a lady in what looks like blue tapestry is probably responsible for Symphony in Three Sexes. Just as dinner is announced, Lady B murmurs to me, I put you next to Sir William. He's interested in water supplies, you know, and I thought you'd like to talk to him about local conditions. Find to my surprise that Sir W and I embark almost at once on the subject of birth control. Why or how this topic presents itself, cannot say at all, but greatly prefer it to water supplies. On the other side of the table, Robert is sitting next to the Symphony in Three Sexes. Hope he is enjoying himself. Conversation becomes general. Everybody, except Robert, talks about books. We all say, A, that we have read The Good Companions, B, that it is a very long book, C, that it is chosen by the Book of the Month Club in America and must have immense sales, and D, that American sales are what really count. We then turn to High Wind in Jamaica and say, A, that it is quite a short book, B, that we hate it, or alternatively adored it, and C, that it really is exactly like children. A small minority here surges into being and maintains, no, they cannot believe that any children in the world wouldn't have noticed that John wasn't there anymore. They can swallow everything else, they say, but not that. Discussion very active indeed. I talked to a pale young man with horn-rimmed glasses, sitting at my left hand, about Jamaica, where neither of us has ever been. This leads, but cannot say how, to stag hunting, and eventually to homeopathy. Mem. Interesting, if time permitted, to trace train of thought leading on from one topic to another. Second, and most disquieting idea, perhaps no such train of thought exists. Just as we reach interchange of opinions about growing cucumbers under glass, Lady B gets up. Go into the drawing room, and Doll exclaimed how nice it is to see the fire. Room very cold. Query, is this good for the bulbs? Lady in blue tapestry takes down her hair, which says she is growing, and puts it up again. We all begin to talk about hair. Depressed to find that everybody in the world, except apparently myself, has grown or is growing long hair again. Lady B says that nowadays there isn't a shingled head to be seen anywhere, either in London, Paris, or New York. Nonsense. Discover in the course of the evening that the blue tapestry has nothing whatever to do with literature, but is a government sanitary inspector, and that Symphony in Three Sexes was written by a pale young man with glasses. Lady B says, did I get him onto the subject of perversion, as he is always so amusing about it? I reply evasively. Men come in, and all herded into billiard room, just as drawing room seems to be getting slightly warmer, where Lady B inaugurates unpleasant game of skill with billiard balls, involving possession of a straight eye, which most of us do not possess. Robert does well at this. Am thrilled, and feel it to be a more satisfactory way of acquiring distinction than even authorship of Symphony in Three Sexes. Congratulate Robert on the way home, but he makes no reply. November 26th. Robert says at breakfast that he thinks we are no longer young enough for late nights. Frippy and Coleman regret that they can no longer allow account to stand over, but must request favor of a check by return, or will be compelled with utmost regret to take further steps. Have written to bank to transfer £6, 13 shillings, and 10 pence from deposit account to current. This leaves £3, 7 shillings, and 2 pence to keep deposit account open. Decide to put off paying milk book until next month, and to let cleaners have something on account instead of full settlement. This enables me to send F and C check post-dated December 1st when allowance becomes due. Financial instability, very trying. November 28th. Receipt from F and C, assuring me of attention to my future wishes, but evidently far from realizing magnitude of effort involved in setting myself straight with them. December 1st. Cable from Dear Rose saying she lands at Tilbury on 10th. Cable back welcome, and we'll meet her, Tilbury, 10th. Tell Vicky that her godmother, my dearest friend, is returning home after 3 years in America. Vicky says, "Oh, will she have a present for me?" I'm disgusted with her mercenary attitude and complain to Mademoiselle, who replies, "C'est la Sainte Vierge revenant sur la terre, madame. Ce sera notre petite Vicky." Do not at all agree with this. Moreover, in other moods, Mademoiselle first person to refer to Vicky as "ce petit démon" and rage. Also, if you're listening to this and you realize how bad my French is, I am quite sorry. I really don't speak French. Apologies. Query: are the Latin races also as sincere as one would wish them to be? December 3rd. Radio from Dear Rose, landing Plymouth 8th after all. Send return message, renewed welcomes, and we'll meet her, Plymouth. Robert adopts unsympathetic attitude and says this is waste of time and money. Do not know if he means cables or a journey to meet ship, but feel sure better not to inquire. Shall go to Plymouth on 7th. Mem, pay grocer's book before I go, and tell him last lot of ginger nuts were soft. Find out first if Ethel kept tin properly shut. December 8th, Plymouth. Arrived last night, terrific storm, ship delayed. Much distress at thought of Rose, probably suffering severe seasickness. Wind howls round hotel, which shakes, rain lashes against window pane all night. Do not like my room, and have unpleasant idea that someone may have committed a murder in it. Mysterious door and corner, which I feel conceals a corpse. Remember all the stories I have read to this effect, and cannot sleep. Finally, open mysterious door, and find large cupboard, but no corpse. Go back to bed again. Storm worse than ever in the morning. I'm still more distressed at the thought of Rose, who will probably have to be carried off ship in state of collapse. Go round to shipping office, and am told to be on docks at 10 o'clock. Having had previous experience of this, take fur coat, camp stool, and copy of American Tragedy as being longest book I can find, and camp myself on docks. Rain stops. Other people turn up and look enviously at camp stool. Very old lady in black trotters up and down till I feel guilty, and offer to give up camp stool to her. She replies, thank you, but my dame is outside, and I can sit in when I wish to do so. Return to American Tragedy feeling discouraged. Find American Tragedy a little oppressive, but read on and on for about 2 hours when policeman informs me that tender is about to start for ship, if I wish to go on board. Remove self, camp stool, and American Tragedy to tender. Read for 40 minutes. Mem, ask Rose if American life is really like that. Very, very unpleasant half-hour follows. Camp stool shows tendency to slide about all over the place, and am obliged to abandon American Tragedy for the time being. Numbers of men of seafaring aspect walk about and look at me. One of them asks, am I a good sailor? No, I am not. Presently ship appears, apparently suddenly rising up from the middle of the waves, and ropes are dangled in every direction. Just as I catch sight of Rose, tender is carried away from the ship's side by colossal waves. Consoled by reflection that Rose is evidently not going to require carrying on shore, but presently begin to feel that boot, as they say, maybe on the other leg. More waves, more ropes, and tremendous general activity. I return to camp stool, but have no strength left to cope with American tragedy. A man in oilskins tells me, "I am in the way there, miss." Remove myself, camp stool, and American tragedy to another corner. A man in sea boots says that if I stay there, I may get badly knocked out. Renewed diminishment of self, camp stool, American tragedy. Am slightly comforted by having been called miss. Catch glimpse of Rose from strange angles as tender heaves up and down. Gangway eventually materializes, and so, camp stool and American tragedy achieve the ship. Realize too late that camp stool and American tragedy might equally well have remained where they were. Dear Rose, most appreciative of effort involved by coming to meet her, but declares herself perfectly good sailor and slept all through the night storm. Try hard not to feel unjustly injured about this. December 9th. Rose staying here 2 days before going to London. Says all American houses are always warm, which annoys Robert. He says in return that all American houses are grossly overheated and entirely airless. Impossible not to feel that this would carry more weight if Robert had ever been to America. Rose also very insistent about efficiency of American telephone service and inclined to ask for glasses of cold water at breakfast time, which Robert does not approve of. Otherwise, dear Rose entirely unchanged and offers to put me up in her West End flat as often I like to come to London, except gratefully. N.B. How very different to old school friend Sissy Crab, with bed sitting room and gas ring in Norwich, but should not like to think myself in any way a snob. On Rose's advice, bring bulb bowls from cellar and put them in drawing room. Several of them perfectly visible, but somehow do not look entirely healthy. Rose thinks too much, watering. If so, Sissy Crab entirely to blame. Ma'am, either move bulb bowls upstairs or tell Ethel to show Lady Box into morning room if she calls. Cannot possibly enter into further discussion with her concerning bulbs. December 10th. Robert this morning complains of insufficient breakfast. Cannot feel that porridge, scrambled eggs, toast, marmalade, scones, brown bread, and coffee give adequate grounds for this, but admit that porridge is slightly burnt. How impossible ever to encounter burnt porridge without vivid recollections of Jane Eyre at Lowood School, say I, parenthetically. This literary illusion, not a success. Robert suggests ringing for cook, and have greatest difficulty in persuading him that this course is utterly disastrous. Eventually go myself to kitchen, in ordinary course of events, and approach subject of burnt porridge circuitously and with utmost care. Cook replies, as I expected, with expressions of astonishment and incredulity, coupled with assurances that kitchen range is again at fault. She also says that new double saucepan, fish kettle, and nursery teacups are urgently required. Make inquiries regarding recently purchased nursery tea set, and am shown one handle without cup, saucer in 3 pieces, and a cup from which large semicircle has apparently been bitten. Feel that Mademoiselle will be hurt if I pursue inquiries further. No, extreme sensibility of the French sometimes makes them difficult to deal with. Read life and letters of distinguished women recently dead, and am struck, as so often, by difference between her correspondence and that of less distinguished women. Immense and affectionate letters from celebrities on every other page, epigrammatic notes from literary and political acquaintances, poetical assurances of affection and admiration from husband, and even infant children. Try to imagine Robert writing in similar strain in the improbable event of my attaining celebrity but fail. Dear Vicky, equally unlikely to commit her feelings, if any, to paper. Robin's letter arrives by second post, and am delighted to have it, as ever, but cannot feel that laconic information about boy, unknown to me, called bags, having been swished, and Mr. Gomshaw, visiting master being kept away by sore throat, is on anything like equal footing with lengthy and picturesque epistles, received almost daily by subject of biography, whenever absent from home. Remainder of mail consists of one bill from chemist. Ma'am, ask Mademoiselle why 2 tubes of Gibbs's toothpaste within 10 days. Illiterate postcard from piano tuner, announcing visit tomorrow, and circular concerning true temperance. Inequalities of fate very curious. Should like, on this account, to believe in reincarnation. Spend some time picturing to myself completely renovated state of affairs, with, amongst other improvements, total reversal of relative positions of Lady B and myself. Query. Is thought on abstract questions ever a waste of time? December 11th. Robber, still harping on topic of yesterday's breakfast, says suddenly, why not a ham? To which I reply austerely that a ham is on order, but will not appear until arrival of R.'s brother William and his wife for Christmas visit. Robber, with every manifestation of horror, says, are William and Angela coming to us for Christmas? This attitude absurd, as invitation was given months ago, at Robert's own suggestion. Query here becomes unavoidable. Does not a misplaced optimism exist, common to all mankind, leading on to false conviction that social engagements, if dated sufficiently far ahead, will never really materialize? Vicky and Mademoiselle return from walk with small white and yellow kitten, alleged, by them homeless and starving. Vicky fetches milk and becomes excited. Agree that kitten shall stay for tonight, but feel that this is weak. Mem, remind Vicky tomorrow that Daddy does not like cats. Mademoiselle becomes very French on subject of cats generally, and am obliged to check her. She is blasée, and all 3 retire to schoolroom. December 12th. Robert says, out of the question to keep stray kitten. Existing kitchen cat more than enough. Gradually modifies this attitude under Vicky's pleadings. All now depends on whether kitten is male or female. Vicky and Mademoiselle declare this is known to them, and kitten already christened Napoleon. Find myself unable to enter into discussion on the point in French. The gardener takes opposite view to Vicky's and Mademoiselle's. They thereupon re-christen the kitten, seen playing with an old tennis ball, as Helen wills. Robert's attention, perhaps fortunately, diverted by a mysterious trouble with the water supply. He says the ram has stopped. This sounds to me biblical. Give Mademoiselle a hint that H. Wills should not be encouraged to put in injudicious appearances downstairs. December 13th. Ram resumes activities. Helen Wills still with us. December 16th. Very stormy weather. Floods out and many trees prostrated at inconvenient angles. Call from Lady Box, who says that she is off to the south of France next week, as she must have sunshine. She thinks, why do I not go there too? And likens me to piece of chewed string, which I feel to be entirely inappropriate and rather offensive figure of speech, though perhaps kindly meant. Why not just pop into the train? Inquires Lady B. Pop across France and pop out into blue sky, blue sea and summer sun. Could make perfectly comprehensive reply to this, but do not do so. Question of expense, having evidently not crossed Lady B's horizon. Mem. Interesting subject for debate at Women's Institute, perhaps. that imagination is incompatible with inherited wealth. On second thoughts, though, fear this as a socialistic trend. Reply to Lady B with insincere professions of liking England very much, even in the winter. She begs me not to let myself become parochially minded. Departure of Lady B with many final appeals to me to reconsider south of France. Make civil pretense, which deceives neither of us, of wavering, and promise to ring her up in the event of a change of mind. Cannot many of our moral lapses from truth be frequently charged upon the tactless persistence of others? December 17th, London. Come up to dear Rose's Fia for 2 days, Christmas shopping, after prolonged discussion with Robert, who maintains that all can equally well be done by post. Take early train so as to get an extra afternoon. Have with me Robert's old leather suitcase, own ditto in fiber, large quantity of chrysanthemums done up in brown paper for Rose, small packet of sandwiches, handbag, fur coat, in case weather turns cold, book for journey, and illustrated paper kindly presented by Mademoiselle at the station. Query, suggested so. Could not some of these things have been dispensed with? And if so, which? Bestow belongings in the rack, and open illustrated paper with sensation of leisured opulence, derived from unwonted absence of all domestic duties. Unknown lady enters carriage at first stop and takes seat opposite. She has expensive-looking luggage in moderate quantity, and small red Morocco jewel case, also brand new copy, without library label, of Life of Sir Edward Marshall Hall. I'm reminded of Lady B, and have recrudescence of inferiority complex. Remaining seats occupied by elderly gentlemen wearing spats, nondescript female in a Burberry, and young man strongly resembling an Arthur Watts drawing. He looks at copy of Punch, and I spend much time in wondering if it contains an Arthur Watts drawing, and if he is struck by resemblance, and if so, what his reactions are, whether of pain or gratification. Roused from these unprofitable but sympathetic considerations by agitation on the part of elderly gentleman, who says that, upon his soul, he is being dripped upon. Everybody looks at ceiling, and Burberry female makes a vague reference to unspecified pipes, which she declares often go like that. Someone else madly suggests turning off the heat. Elderly gentleman refuses all explanations and declares that it comes from the rack. We all look with horror at Rose's chrysanthemums, from which large drips of water descend regularly. Am overcome with shame. Remove chrysanthemums, apologize to elderly gentleman, and sit down again opposite to superior unknown, who has remained glued to Sir E. Marshall Hall throughout, and reminds me of Lady B more than ever. Mem, speak to Mademoiselle about officiousness of thrusting flowers into water unasked just before wrapping up. Immerse myself in Illustrated Weekly. Am informed by it that Lord Toto Finch, INSE, is responsible for camera study, herewith, of the loveliest legs in Los Angeles, belonging to well-known English society girl, near relation, by the way, of famous racing peer, father of well-known smart set twins. Portrait over leaf. Query. Is our popular press going to the dogs? Turn attention to short story, but give it up on being directed. Just as I become interested, the page XLV, which I am quite unable to locate. Become involved instead with suggestions for Christmas gifts. I want my gifts, the writer assures me, to be individual and yet appropriate, beautiful and yet enduring. Then why not enameled dressing table set, a £94, 16, 4, set of crystal ware, exact replica of early English cut glass at moderate price of £34. 1790. Why not indeed? I'm touched to discover, further on, however, explicit reference to giver with restricted means. Though even here, I'm compelled to differ from author's definition of restricted means. Let originality of thought, she says, add character to trifling offering. Would not many of my friends welcome suggestion, the course of treatment, 6 for 5 guineas, at Madame Dolly Varden's beauty parlor in Piccadilly to be placed to my account? Cannot visualize myself making this offer to our vicar's wife, still less reception of it, and decide to confine myself to 1 and 6 penny calendar with picture of sunset on Scaw Fell, as usual. Indulge, on the other hand, in a few moments' idle fantasy, in which I suggest to Lady B that she should accept from me, as a graceful and appropriate Christmas gift, a course of reducing exercises accompanied by soothing and wrinkle-eradicating face massage. This imaginative exercise brought to a conclusion by arrival. Obliged to take taxi from station, mainly owing to chrysanthemums, which would not combine well with 2 suitcases and fur coat on moving stairway, which I distrust and dislike anyhow, and am only too apt to make conspicuous failure of stepping off with right foot foremost, but also partly owing to fashionable locality of Rose's Flat, miles removed from any underground. Kindest welcome from dear Rose, who was most appreciative of chrysanthemums. Refrain from mentioning unfortunate incident with elderly gentlemen in train. Thank you for listening to Sleepy. Good night.